Hey everyone, welcome back to another anime review. Now this is probably long overdue. I finally watched My Dress Up Darling. Now throughout this review, I'm going to give my honest opinions on how I felt about the show, some things I didn't like, all the things I did like, and an overall score out of 10 at the end of this video. And a quick warning, if you have not seen this anime, we're going to be doing a review of all 12 episodes basically, so there will be spoilers. Now a couple things to point out about this anime is that its animation is actually really stunning, to be honest. I was actually kind of blown away by a couple scenes, to be honest, so I have no complaints there, to be honest, as far as the animation goes. I thought it was really well done. Now the show itself is very heartwarming. It basically dives headfirst into friendship, into love, as well as following your dreams here. And it does actually have a good amount of fan service, which is a big contributing factor in my personal opinion. Let me highlight that again. In my personal opinion, the fan service in the show is a huge contributing factor. Outside of the great storytelling, it's just a huge contributing factor as to why this anime is so popular. Now, unfortunately, this is about to be a really hot take, but I do feel like if there was a significant amount less of fan service in this anime, I don't think it would be as popular. But again, that's just my opinion. Now the story itself is about a guy named Wakana Gojō as well as a girl named Marin who absolutely loves the cosplay, and Wakana does actually love to make these Hina dolls. He basically just eats, breathes, and sleeps Hina dolls essentially. Now Wakana is a super shy guy. He has absolutely no friends, and Marin is the absolute opposite. She's basically, you would think, just basically popular in high school, and he's the quiet kid in high school. So when they meet, it's a little awkward for him, to be honest, because it's him coming out of his shell. And basically, fast forwarding a little bit, essentially he actually, his sewing machine does actually break, so they end up meeting in a actual, it's another room in the school, and he's actually sewing, and she does find out that he does actually make these dolls, as well as makes clothing. So then she shows him her cosplay that she made, and he's absolutely disgusted with the work, and that's where that kind of starts, where he basically starts making her cosplays for her and helping her basically achieve her dream. Now right off the bat, that made me really enjoy Wakana's character, and here's why. Because his determination to help somebody that he barely knows, help their dream come true essentially, was just awesome to see. The display of just care that he did actually have for her in that moment, barely knowing her, I thought it was just awesome. And Marin herself is a very likable character. She's very quirky, very just out there, and she really knows how to be a good friend and get people out of their shells. Now I do have another little bit of a hot take here, and that is episode 2 in its entirety. I do feel like episode 2 could basically be labeled as filler because it didn't exactly have any importance to the overall story, because he was just taking her measurements. That whole episode was essentially fan service and realistically could be skipped and you wouldn't miss out on anything except obviously the fan service that a lot of people did enjoy in that episode. But again, I do feel like if that episode didn't exist, the story could have progressed just fine. Now another defining factor that made me thoroughly enjoy and thoroughly like Wakana's character was the fact that he was so determined to finish her cosplay in that time frame that he thought he had, essentially, with everything else going on, with his grandpa getting out of the hospital, and then he had the exams on top of trying to make her this perfect cosplay and getting all that work done. He even was almost sick, or I don't know, it wasn't exactly clear if he was like super sick essentially, but he worked through some kind of sickness or exhaustion that he did have, and ultimately he did actually finish it. I thought it was so heartwarming how exhausted he looked when she was there, and then when she fully realized how much work he put into this and how much she actually neglected the situation and didn't fully realize how much of a workload he had. I feel like I kind of related to that character, and I think a lot of people did relate to him in that moment. Because I remember a time when I first started on YouTube and I was working my marketing job outside of YouTube that I was doing before I was doing this full time, and I was juggling a relationship, and then I started YouTube doing that, trying to do that multiple days a week, and all the editing and all the learning and things like that, and having a huge load on your plate at the time. So I definitely related to him in that moment. It was very heartwarming to see his determination, his dedication, and overall care for someone, how much love he was showing towards her and her dreams. Like, it was basically like a really heartfelt moment, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. Now fast forward a little bit, you do have Marin making her first appearance at an event, and she obviously thoroughly enjoyed that. and it was like, it put a little bit of a smile on my face, because you saw Wakana basically admiring his work, seeing how happy he made her, and he was just overall happy. It was really good, and I really, really enjoyed that moment as well. And one gripe I did actually have was that I thought we were going to see more events, like cosplay events in the actual show. Like, I felt like that was very lacking in the first season to kind of show the build-up, essentially, because how she kind of like portrayed it and how she explained it was she wanted to be this big cosplay superstar, and I want to feel like she only really had an Instagram presence. She wasn't really making it out to events or making an effort to go to events, at least based off how the story was kind of progressing. A very important moment in the show was the train scene after the cosplay event, when Wakana was very exhausted, and he basically kind of like mumble whispers as he's slowly kind of passing out that she looked beautiful. And then, you know, Marin fully realizes that, hey, he just called me beautiful, and it flashbacks to where he says that that's not a word that he uses very often unless it's describing something that he absolutely like loves or cares for. So in that kind of moment, she's like, oh crap, I kind of love him. And this obviously does lead into the next episode, or it might be the next one after that, where they're watching the movie and she's just sitting next to him and she's like, oh my god, I love him. He's so hot. He's so handsome. Oh my god. And it was kind of funny to see her, I guess, freak out like a normal teenager would, and she's just having her mini meltdowns in her head, like, what do I do? Oh my god, I'm so in love with him. And it was just very hilarious to see, but obviously at that moment you do realize how much feeling she does actually have for him, given she's already saying that she loves him. Now, fast forwarding a little bit, you do have Juju, the other very, very popular cosplayer, introduced in the story. Obviously she was stalking Wakana and followed him home at this point, which was leading up to one of the most awkward bath scenes I've ever seen in my life. It felt so unnecessary to be there, to be honest. Like, again, it's one of those fan service things, and I fully understand why the creators put it in there, but it just felt so unnecessary. It's so awkward to watch. Like, it was so freaking awkward. And it was almost so, like, silly. It was like, he basically barged in. What were you expecting? She was in a bath. Your grandfather told you she was in the bath. So it's just, I don't know, it felt like a really unnecessary scene. It was very, very weird. Now, after Wakana does realize why Juju is there and that she wants him to make her cosplays, I do feel like this kind of sets up the fact that they will actually have him basically have a cosplay harem going, essentially. And I do feel like this even does foreshadow a future career for him in making cosplay designs, to where he's going to start getting online custom orders maybe, and I'm assuming that's going to lead into season 2 somehow. I'm just making kind of assumptions here, but it does feel like that's what it's setting it up for, that he's going to have a cosplay harem as well as lead up to some form of cosplay business. Now, as I got to know Juju's character a little bit more, I don't know if anybody else, like, had this kind of like realization, but she reminds me a lot of Sinon from Sword Art Online, for anybody who has watched that anime. She's just like very sarcastic, she's very standoffish, she likes to be left alone essentially, and I do feel like that was a lot of Sinon's character until she opened up a lot more to Kirito. So in this show, obviously, she wasn't open to the idea at first of doing group cosplays with Marin, and you know, obviously eventually her sister did join in on that, which was really cool, to be honest. And again, I feel like that furthers my point that he has this cosplay harem of girls. And it's actually pretty funny, to be honest. Anyways, so going back to Juju's character, I do feel like her having that experience in the abandoned hospital, I believe it was an abandoned hospital, with Marin and her younger sister and Wakana, I do feel like that had so much character development for her and her younger sister. It opened her up to the idea of groups of friends and group cosplays and other experiences, essentially. So I do feel like she had a lot of character development very early on. After we learn a little bit more about Juju's character, as well as her personality and her backstory a little bit, you do have that moment where Wakana and Juju are kind of talking, essentially, and in her head she kind of realizes that, and it hints at it a little bit, that she probably has feelings for him. Now with that, this furthers my earlier point where they're basically slowly creating a cosplay harem for him. And I think it's kind of funny. Like, literally, it's so funny to me, because he went from being alone in his room to essentially having a harem, like, already. And I don't know if this is going to introduce a love triangle situation in the next season, given, obviously, she has some kind of feelings for him developing, and then Marin has feelings for him, but he has feelings for Marin, and maybe they'll set it up to where they have their moment and he ends up having feelings for her. Personally though, I don't know what they could do if they make it a love triangle situation to take Wakana's gaze off of Marin, because obviously the dude really likes her. Now after their group cosplaying was over, I do feel like this kind of goes back to my other point that I was making, was that I was expecting more events, maybe like a montage of them at events and her getting pictures taken of her with fans and things like that. I was expecting more cosplay events or basically appearances by her, but I get it, she's still not crazy popular yet, obviously, like compared to Juju, but I don't know, I guess I felt like that was missing from the first season, just to show the build-up of events. Obviously in the opening credits and the end credits, you see a lot of different cosplay outfits that I'm assuming are going to take place in the next season, may have taken place in the manga already, I have not read that. I feel like that was missing, essentially, but maybe they didn't want to give away too much in the first season, so I was definitely willing to be lenient on that. Now at this point they did move on to more cosplay outfits, and Wakana, he agreed to make it and he was very excited to make it and the whole process, but he couldn't bring himself to actually look at her in the outfit and do the full dress up with her in the outfit because of how innocent he is and how he's just kind of like, that's just, he feels like that's too revealing. And I do feel like this shows a lot of his like overall character, essentially just like, hey, I don't want to see you in this revealing setting, or, you know, this makes me very nervous, essentially. And it does feel like their relationship kind of took a little bit of a leap in terms of like comfortability, excuse me, because in that moment they kind of discuss, hey, I apologize if you weren't crazy comfortable with that. I will try to be more considerate of your feelings with the next cosplay. Now, obviously, we have to talk about that love hotel scene. This was a big defining moment in their relationship, basically, where obviously he had his hands on her hips and they got into that awkward position, and then they both kind of realized, hey, you know, we kind of like each other, which obviously Marin knew a little bit way before that, essentially. I think Wakana didn't fully realize his feelings for her up until that moment with how he was looking at her and he was like, oh crap, essentially. So it was obviously a very steamy moment for those two. And then the phone did interrupt their kiss that was about to happen, which it was a little disappointing because I was expecting them to kiss at least like once, essentially, because as it does follow to the end of the series, you don't see them kiss. That's going to happen in the next season, most likely. So that was a little disappointing, but they know what they were doing. They were basically teasing the next season. Now, something I'm kind of unsure of, and anybody in the actual comment section can kind of clear this up for me, hopefully. I don't know if it's different in the actual manga, but after the love hotel scene, it almost felt like a little time skip situation to the end of summer, because it does pan over to Wakana working on one of his dolls late at night, and it does show the date, which is August, which is basically the end of summer for them, I believe. So I don't know if it was like a time skip situation where they kind of just like went on with their lives for a little bit and kept in touch a little bit, because you do have him getting that notification of Marin saying, help, and she just needed some help with like a cosplay, essentially. So they're back in touch, and he's like, hey, basically, what have you been up to? What have you been working on? And he does find out that she's in a magazine now, and she's basically a model, and he's like very, very surprised about this, seemingly that he had no idea this was happening. So how in touch were they actually with each other? Did they take a little break from each other because they realized the feelings they had? Like, this wasn't fully explained, and that bothered me a little bit because it was just a weird time skip moment right after that. I feel like there was a lot of information missing in those two different scenes. Now at this point, we're at the end of the series, and they do actually attend a fireworks show, Wakana and Marin, and this is where they kind of get some food, and they're seeing the fireworks, and first of all, beautiful scene. I loved how they did it. It was very, very beautiful. I do feel like it was a little cheesy, because like I feel like most anime endings do have those fireworks blasting in the, at festivals blasting in the background, but I thought it was a cute scene, and it was very, very well animated, and it looked beautiful. But at this moment, this is another very important moment where Wakana does realize how much Marin has really helped him as a person and helped him with anxiety and making friends and everything like that, and just overall how much he appreciates her. And in that moment, I could arguably say that he does fully realize that he loves this girl and he doesn't want to be away from her. And then obviously at the end, you do have them on the phone together after she watched a scary movie and he's slowly falling asleep. Eventually he does pass out, and it ends with her saying, Wakana, I love you. And obviously he was passed out, so he didn't hear her. But I was actually, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I was expecting him to be awake like half awake and maybe he heard that and then he was just, it's gonna pan over to his face like bright red and not knowing what to say, and then she just clicks and hangs up. I thought that would have been a cool ending because he would have known, and the opposite, she wouldn't have known. I felt like that could have set up for a cool story, but it was also kind of cute how it ended with her confessing her love out loud for once while he was sleeping. So overall, I did thoroughly enjoy this anime. I thought it was really well done. Obviously, you guys heard my gripes. I had a couple issues with it. I felt like it was kind of slow in some parts. I would have liked to see a lot more cosplay events. I feel like I stressed that enough in this this video, but I do feel like that was severely lacking. I wanted to see more of her character at events. I wanted to see more people really admire her and love on her and everything like that, essentially. Like, just see how happy she is as a character with her dreams coming true. And I feel like there was kind of a lack of that outside of the online presence that she did have. But I guess she kind of got that with the magazine situation too. I think the score I would give this would be, for me, a 7.5 out of 10, because again, I do have my issues with it. The fan service was a bit much at times. I don't think it needed as much as it had. Like, I'm fine with fan service in anime. I know why it's there. It's to make it more popular than it is. But I don't feel like this was one of those animes that needed it to be good, essentially. I feel like that's a little bit of a hot take, because again, I do feel like, and I'm going to stand strong with this point, that if it didn't have that much fan service, I don't think it would be as popular as it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with fan service, first of all. I don't have an issue with fan service. With how much there were in some of the questionable scenes, I feel like there could have been less. Again, I'll, reiterate that, but I don't feel like this needed that much fan service to still be as good as it is. Anyways though, guys, my final score on this one is 7.5 out of 10. If you guys have any other recommendations for shoujo anime that you guys would like me to check out and like me to review on the channel, feel free to let me know down below. Again, overall, I enjoyed it. It's an enjoyable watch. Would I watch it again? I don't know in the future, to be honest. It didn't scream, hey, watch me again, but I found the characters likable, I found the story likable, I found the love story likable, and the connection that they have. It was very enjoyable, but again, I don't know if it's something that I would just go back and watch again, not at least for a very long time. Anyways though, I do hope you guys enjoyed my video. I know I had a lot of hot takes, but I wanted to give my honest opinion on how I felt about it, and feel free to give your honest opinions. If you guys disagreed with me at any point, please feel free. If you feel like I'm missing some information on different parts, let me know down below. This is how I'm going to get better at these anime reviews for the future. But I feel like I had some solid points, and definitely some could be argued about my opinion, but I guess that's what opinions are for. Anyways though, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.